and welcome to this talk with one of my favorite people in Europe. This is, I'd love to introduce you to Sabine Baerlocher. Sabine is the founder and CEO of Active Synapses, and through her consulting company, she is a religious diversity trainer, an intercultural trainer. She's also an intercultural lecturer at the University of Applied Sciences in Geneva. Not only that, Sabine is the president of CIETAR Switzerland. CIETAR is the Society for Intercultural Education, Training and Research, and I was lucky enough to be at your conference 2 years ago, and unfortunately didn't get to your conference in Verdun-les-Bains in April for obvious reasons, which I was very sad about because it's an amazing event. And also the executive officer of SARA, the Swiss Association of Relocation Agents. And not only that, Sabine has also been a vice president at EURA, where your contribution to the ongoing training of our members has been phenomenal. And you're also our primary intercultural trainer, and you are the lead trainer on cultural theory and intelligence, which is the MIM program, module 4. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us, and thank you for being here.
And I'm a DJ.
And you're a DJ. If you look on our YouTube channel, you will see a movie that I've just put together for the Eurofil Forum, where Sabine is in her role as a DJ, celebrating our final night parties for the last 12 years, I think, since
yeah,
I'm thinking Lisbon was your first experience, and it's great. So
yeah,
it's great to see you, as it always is.
I did it a few times.
You did it. So we are here just to introduce a new MIM Plus module, which Sabine has been working on for quite some time. I'd love to ask you, first of all, this module is called Living and Working with Bias. Can you tell me how this area of expertise came about for you? Because it's quite a new thing within the intercultural world, right?
Well, studying in culture, cultural communication, diversity, etc., I started to read books also on how the brain works, because there have been a lot of new books that came out in the last 10, 15 years about, well, first, how the brain works in general, but now there's also all of those cognitive science that are intercultural cognitive science. And do we have differences in how the brain works depending on the culture we grew up in? Yes, no, etc. Depending on the religion we practice, the way we practice religion. You know, there's a lot of things. I'm pretty sure many of you have seen things about the brain waves that are influenced by meditation or by praying and those kinds of things. So being a permanent student and trying to learn new things all the time, and being also an avid reader, I have read a lot of things. And I watch stupid YouTube videos, and I read academic studies and everything in between. So, because I like diversity also in the way I get my information. And I started to read and to hear and to watch videos about bias. And so I started to do some tests. There's a lot of online tests that you can do. And I was massively surprised, because I thought I was unbiased. I thought I wasn't a racist. I thought I was gender neutral. I mean, not me as a person, but in terms of not being sexist, okay, or being a, yeah. I thought I didn't have preconceived ideas about your religious affiliation and things like that. And I realized it was not the case at all for me. And I thought, okay, if me, with everything that I know, everything that I'm trying to achieve, I am still having all of those more than stereotype, real bias, you know, towards some kind of people, some groups, etc. What is it for other people, and what can I do personally to try to fight them, to be aware of them, to try to overcome them, and how can I help others to do that? If I can do it for myself, how can I help others to reach that goal?
It's so interesting, because I mean, I've been lucky enough to train with Sabine over a number of years, and now, you know, you deal with our intercultural training on your own, but we've talked about stereotypes and for so many years, and it's every single time we've run that training about stereotypes, everyone in the room basically says, yes, okay, they exist, I accept them. I don't think that I do, but when I look at it, I do, which is exactly what you're saying about, you know, you are the most well-read person I've ever met. Every single time I see you, you've got 17 new books that are really fascinating, and I'm like, give me the condensed version. You know, you're so great at that. But from that point of view, did that surprise you that you came up against, given all of your intercultural backgrounds, all of the stuff you've done, were you surprised by that?
What was really surprising, for example, to me, was the fact that I'm biased against Christian and positively towards Muslim. So in fact, I changed, even though, I mean, I'm not baptized, but of course I grew up in a family. My parents were both Christians. They grew up as Christian, and I grew up in a region that is a Christian region with Christian values, a very Protestant part of, you know, Europe, Geneva. And in fact, by not wanting to be biased or racist against Muslims, in fact, what I did is I changed my way of thinking to the point that I changed my bias. And I'm automatically looking negatively at people that are too Christian and automatically looking positively at somebody Muslim, which is not okay either. Okay, I should be neutral. I would like to be neutral. So that was the one thing that was the most surprising to me. The other thing that was really surprising is that I'm still gender biased. I still think automatically of a man if I speak of if somebody tells me picture a CEO, I don't picture a woman, you know. A conductor at the opera, you know, conducting the how do you call that, the orchestra. I see a man, I don't see a woman automatically. And those are the things that make me crazy that I'm trying to fight. So at least what I do now is that as soon as I have that first thought, that fast thinking thought, I can, you know, grab it and say, okay, no, just think of something else. But those are the most obvious thing. And then there's everything else that is not totally obvious, you know, considering that everybody under the age of 30 is stupid, for example.
That's a very, yeah, let's not go there. But I mean, how, can I ask, how has this influenced, because as I say, as an intercultural lecturer, you know, I know your work and I know your skills. How has it changed the way that you look at the intercultural impact on our industry of things like bias?
Yeah, it's very difficult. The first thing is that in all of my training and lecture now, I integrate the concept of bias, because I think it's way easier to tell someone that our brain is playing tricks on us in any case than to tell someone you're racist. Because in fact, we're all racist in a way. Okay, we're all sexist, we're all racist, we all have that. But in reality, what is important is to realize that our brain has to put people in some boxes and in some categories, and that there are ways of being aware of it and of working on it and of changing, okay? And also tolerating in a different way. And also, I think it has broadened my perspective on people that are really like that, on considering that it's not only because they don't know someone, because we fear what we don't know most of the time, but also because they might simply not understand the way their brain works and the way they react to things automatically.
I think that's so interesting, because we've spoken so many times when we've been, you know, talking together about how, you know, when you look at the concept of intercultural theory, you know, you were the person who switched me onto the fact that it's not just Hofstede. You know, it's not just the research. We have to look at the individual and the impact on the individual. And it looks to me like, you know, what you're doing within the new module is trying to get people to look at the individual. You are an individual. You have, you know, we all have to accept that we have bias, that we hold it. And are you looking at the question how you can reverse that or change it, or just acknowledge it?
No, well, first you need to understand and acknowledge it. Okay, and then of course the idea is to be able to pick it up as soon as you have those thoughts, okay? And then to try to overcome them and become, it can become in a way almost automatic, that as soon as the thought appears, you can correct it, okay? And that's what is doable. Like with everything, all kind of, you know, racist thought or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, there are ways of working on it, but this is way more than just the training and theory, etc. It's really practicing on yourself. And the more you practice yourself and you experiment, it's a real experimental kind of training. So I'm going to give the tips and tricks, but then people need to do it. If you don't work on yourself, then there's not a lot of changes. But still, some of those bias are very, very useful for people in the relocation, because some of those bias, and you will see when I explain them in the course, some of those bias are things that are going on in the brain of our client when they see a different culture. So instead of saying, oh, it's a culture shock, you can say it's a bias, and this is the way most of the brain look at things, etc. And therefore, instead of saying to your client, because I had so many, well, I'm mixing up things, but I had so many clients in my relocation years that told me, oh, but you know, this is my 15th move. I know what culture shock is about. I don't have it. Well, first of all, yes, you do have it anyway. It's just that you manage it maybe in a better way. But if then you realize that the way you look at things is still influenced by your bias, it will also change something.
It's fascinating, because what you've done is you've taken the concept of culture shock and put it back into the kind of neuroscience of training yourself. And when you were saying that about, you know, acknowledging it and stopping it, it's almost the same kind of, my experience of that would be when I learned to meditate, that you wait for a negative thought to come into your head and then you put it aside. It can wait later. It's training your brain, right?
Yes, it's really that. It's training your brain to not do what you don't want your brain to be doing. That's the thing, yeah. Yeah, it has to do with it.
This is a great subject for taking people's intercultural education further. And I was so pleased when you came up with the concept of this as a MIM Plus module, because we've been looking at a way to move on from, I mean, like I said, when we started off developing the MIM for cultural theory and intelligence, I was the one who said, this is what Hofstede said, this is what Edward T. Hall said, and da-da-da. And you're the one who said, and now we need to look at how this impacts on us as individuals. And you've done it brilliantly with this one, pushing it into a much deeper realm.
And I think it helps us, you know, it's like, you know, somebody I really like says, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? It's the same thing. If you don't work on yourself, how are you going to help other people work on themselves? And if you want to really be accepting of your colleagues that are diverse, but also of your client, and really make them feel integrated, it's a really good way of doing it. And it's not, in my experience, it's much easier to tell people that it's biased, that we all have them, etc. They take it less personally than if you say it's because of your culture or not. People do not feel attacked in their identities when you speak of bias. When you speak of culture, they might feel attacked in their identities.
It's so bound up with national identity and pride in some cases. And, you know, there certainly, I mean, we've talked about this many times, that, you know, national identity is very framed by how proud you are to stand by a flag or an identity. And this is, like you say, so when you're working with assignees, because I know you do a lot of intercultural training for, you know, big companies, how do you bring this in to what you were doing before? How has it changed how you're training?
Well, for example, I will use some of the standard, I mean, some of the bias that we almost all have, like confirmation bias, okay? The confirmation bias is the fact that we all have a tendency to look for facts, data, information that confirm what we already know or what we're already convinced about, instead of looking for the opposite. Sure. At the moment, because of COVID, that's what everybody's doing. You have people that are super afraid and they're looking only for the statistics and the fact that are confirming that it's terrible, that everybody is going to die, that you should not leave your house, etc. And the one that say, no, but it's stupid. We don't even need to wear the mask if we're not using it like a surgeon would do it in the hospital. There's no use in wearing a mask and doing all of those things. We should just have the whole population get it and it's just a flu and that's nothing. And those people are looking for all of the information that are confirming the fact that it's, yeah, you get it, but it's not that bad. Okay. And it's interesting to see that manichaeism at the moment, and I see that in all my friends, family, etc. I think I never had fight like the ones I had in the last few weeks or few months with people that are super close to me because our opinion diverge. And I see that the more it goes on, the more we diverge because we are both on both sides looking for only what is confirming what we believe in. Which means that if you move to another country, if you move to France and you're convinced that all the French hate Americans and you're an American and you move to France, okay, the things that you're going to look for are all the little signs that show you that French don't like the Americans. But all of the 80 or 90% of the French that welcome you, that are nice to you, etc., you will not even see it. Not really. And that's a bias.
That is so fascinating. And I've never thought of that. Well, I had thought about it in terms of confirmation bias because I read your module. But when you start to think about how that impacts on the day-to-day professional lives of people within relocation, that's quite profound. It's really quite profound.
And that impacts on their daily life, but that impacts also at work. You know, if you consider, there are lots of bias, not only the confirmation, but of course I will go into details in my presentation, but you have all of those little things that will simply amplify things that you already believe in, or and then if you don't pay attention to them, you might have huge problem working with someone because of some of your bias and because you didn't stop, look at yourself and say, okay, is that coming from me or coming from the other person? Yeah. You know, we said that stereotypes tell more about the people that has the stereotype than about the person that you're describing. And it's exactly the same with bias in reality.
Sabine, it's a fascinating module. I'm so delighted that you've put this together for Euro members, and we'll be launching. Well, for those of you who are watching this at the beginning of the module, clearly it's already launched. For those of you who are watching this as an interview, it will be launching very soon. But I really can't thank you enough for your expertise. And again, for those of you who are watching this as wanting to take this course, Sabine's extra resource materials are amazing. You could study for weeks if you find something you're really interested in, because like you said, Sabine, you've watched everything from YouTube videos to academic papers that you've read to TED Talks. It's superb. So thank you so much for putting this together.
Yeah, and I have tried really in all of that material to put all kinds of things. There are full books, but there's also some academic studies, and there are videos that are just entertaining or way more serious, let's put it this way. So,
and what we'll try and do is, again, it's something we talked about before, but we had a LinkedIn group at one point for culture, and we'll try and get that going again, because I remember you came to our office and you showed me the most hilarious video on YouTube about the runners and the lady who looked Asian and they're running through the Hollywood Hills or something like that.
What kind of Asian are you?
Hilarious. So
the link is on the day 4 of the MIM.
Yes, it is.
What kind of Asian are you?
Absolutely, yeah, it's hilarious. Listen, Sabine, thank you again so much for putting this together. It's a terrific module, and I look forward to the developing of a whole new suite of stuff later in the year, because it's always great working with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this interview. Bye-bye.
Thank you.